Hey there folks, and welcome back once again to the next exciting episode of Mego Hospital. Today on Mego Hospital, I'm going to show you how to fix the typical walking stallion. There was at least 4 different variations of this. They're all the basic same mold with a couple of minor exceptions. There's some different colors and some different controller configurations. On the Action Jackson ones, they have a, for lack of a better term, a brand mark of AJ, the Action Jackson logo, on one, I forget what side it's on, but it's on one of the hindquarters, and it's not on the other horses, just on the ones from the Action Jackson line. Besides that, they're all the same. They're all the same stallion horse, whatever you want to call it, as far as mechanics and the mold and the function, which also would obviously transfer over to repairing them. So anyway, this one is the Planet of the Apes Action Stallion. Now the Action Jackson one was boxed as the Wild Mustang. I think that was the only iteration of that. I don't think they called it anything else. The Planet of the Apes one, I believe, was just called the Action Stallion. And there was a horse called Shadow for the Wild West heroes. And then there was Dynamite's horse, and the name of the horse is escaping me at the moment. Maybe it doesn't have a name, but it's like the Golden Palomino or something like that. Anyhow, like I said, there's different paint applications and mold colors that differentiate all these different horses. And then of course there's one that is molded in gray, which is extremely rare. I've never seen one in person or had the opportunity to purchase one. I've seen pictures of them, so I'm fairly certain that they're real and exist. Anyhow, we're getting a little off tangent here. So the typical thing on these is they usually don't work. And that's not necessarily because it's broken, although that is a possibility. In here, where these wires go in to the posterior, a lot of times you'll find one disconnected at the motor. But usually, it's the motor itself that's just seized up, or whatever you want to call it, frozen for lack of use for decades usually. So this one's missing the back of the case, but it's still fully functional. I mean, you could put rubber bands on this, or, you know, pieces turn up now and then. But it takes 2 D batteries to go in like this, and then you've got 2 buttons. One makes it move forward and one makes it move backward. As you can see, nothing's happening. So what's involved next is opening up the horse and attempting to get the motor unfrozen. And then you have to oil everything because they're extremely noisy until you oil them, plus they'll work better. But the first thing you have to do is you have to take off any accessories that are on the horse. Usually will be, this is the most commonly survived piece on these, the bridle, or I think that's what it's called. Very fragile. Don't try to take the stirrups off of the bridle here, because you're almost guaranteed to break it. So what I've found to be the easiest way to get these off without breaking them is to take this front part that goes under the nose and pull it back like that so it's up. You see how it moved up its face a little bit? Then if you take this part here and you gently pop it up over the ear, and do the same thing over here, comes right off without breaking it. And just reverse the process to put it back on. That'll save yourself a heap of trouble. And on the saddle, I don't have, well, I do have one to show you, but it's in my cabinet. This one didn't have one. I picked this up on eBay. But it has a belly band that goes around and connects to two very fragile little T-shaped bars that come off the sides of the saddle pointing down. And you have to be really careful, you know, to get that off. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. You have to make the T-bar turn to line up with the slot, and then, you know, very gently, be very careful with it, because those are very easy to break and not easy to fix or to replace. And if you're lucky enough, you actually have the original stirrups, which are like trying to find hen's teeth for these things. So anyhow, so now you've got two screws that hold this together. And, oh, I'm sorry, 3 screws that hold this together. So you just take your screwdriver. These look a little rusty. May have to get a different screwdriver. Alright, let's see. Many times you will hear that snapping noise when you unscrew plastic toys. It's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's just the friction of the pieces all held together with the screws. Sometimes it's broken. And when you put it back together, don't over tighten them. Never over tighten screws in plastic toys. This one's a little rusty. I'm hoping I can get this out without a problem. Yeah, I got it. I have to clean this one up a little bit. Oh, one other thing to point out before I take it apart here. If you notice on this one, the rear legs are kind of splayed out. They're not supposed to be like that. They're supposed to be more in like this. And that's from a spring that's in the back that either somebody was in there and put it back together wrong, or it moved. So we'll have to address that as we work on this. Sometimes you'll find that someone will have tried to force these legs, and then you'll have bent components in here, but they can be straightened. Now you simply take this off. Sometimes these are a little difficult to get off if the legs aren't in a good position, but it's always possible. There's the screws. They're all the same length, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. Now the tail also bobs up and down when this walks, and it's on this little mechanism. Well, it's not even a mechanism, it's just like a little bar that moves and just basically makes it go like that. But just pull this out with the pin that goes through it. The pin will fall out if you're not watching, so make sure that you don't lose it. And you just slide the other part out. The legs. So you've got 2 horse halves, a tail, and a weird looking mechanical thing with legs. So now looking at this, it looks to me like the wires are okay. So I think we're just dealing with a motor issue. Something don't look right here. It shouldn't be moving like that. I can't tell if that's bent. Yeah, I think it is. So I think if we're lucky, I think we're going to have to try to get this pin out of here, and we're going to have to bend that axle, so to speak, of the leg here back straight, because it's crooked. That's why the legs are not working right. So let's see. You see how bent that is? So we're going to have to take some pliers or hammer that back flat before we put this back together. But right now I'm going to put it back in so we can see if we can get this moving first, and then I'll fix that before we put it all back together. So what we want to do now is put the batteries back in again. Now there's always a possibility that it's got some contact issues with this switch and stuff, but I'm not seeing any broken wires up here or anything like that. So I think we're good there. So now we have to basically get this motor moving. So I want to show you what I'm doing here. On the side of the motor, you've got this large gear right here. So you're going to turn this by hand while you're pressing one of the buttons. It doesn't really matter which one. But luckily this freewheels, so you hear that noise? That's what the motor's going to sound like, but 1,000 times worse once it gets moving. So usually you have to turn this quite a few number of times. Sometimes if you put some oil in it first or electrical cleaner, that'll help move it a little faster. But right now we're just going to see what we can do without that. So I'm just going to push one of the buttons. Try the other button. In case one of the buttons was sticking or something, or not functioning well. You might have to do this for a minute or two. Get to clean whatever's dirty in there. You try spinning it the opposite way. It's hard to do this with holding this with one hand and trying to do this with the other. Another thing you can try if that's not helping is a lot of times if you connect a 9-volt battery up to both terminals here, it gives it a big juice jump, and that sometimes is enough to overcome the inactivity of the motor. Also, if you get the motor moving and then it doesn't work with the switch, then you know you got a problem between here and the switch. So let me grab a 9-volt battery. Okay. Let's see what we can do here. See, it's moving, it's working. I don't know if that was enough to juice it. Let's see. Not from this switch. So we may still have another problem. We may have a lack of continuity from this switch to the motor. So I guess we're going to have to check these wires and if we're getting power through this here. I don't see any issues with the battery box. It should be working. We have a switch problem or a wiring problem here. I think we're going to have to get the multimeter and check the wiring. Alright, it's got this cheap Harbor Freight meter here, but I don't know where my other one is. I couldn't find it. But this will work. So, not exactly sure how this thing is wired, but let's see what we come up with here. Let's see what we got over here. Well, that's right, 3 volts on the batteries. I'm getting 3 volts through that button. Oh, what the hell happened? Did all of a sudden decide to start working? Or something with my wire do that? What's going on here? I wonder if I'm not getting good contact on this battery thing here. Let's see what we got up here. I can honestly say I haven't had one with this much trouble. Usually they're running by now. I don't see any reason why this shouldn't work. I mean, this is a little loose in the battery compartment here, but it doesn't seem like it's that loose. Alright, let's double check. Make sure these terminals are clean. They look fine to me, but maybe that's the problem. There's no corrosion on them. This is shining them up though. Alright, let's adjust these a little bit. I think that was it. Let's see. Or not. What in the world? Okay, I was working a little off camera on this. I did take the switch apart, and it did have like a little bit of rust in there, and I cleaned it off with the emery board and put it all back together, and it still doesn't want to work. So I'm not sure if maybe it just needs a lot of oil. So I mean, we'll try everything we can. Or maybe I just was impatient and I wasn't turning it enough times, but this is weird. I mean, this thing should have been going by now. Now I don't want to work at all. Oh, wait, I wasn't getting a good contact. See how much quieter it got though with the oil? What the hell? Something in this switch. Something funky in this switch. Wait a minute. I just noticed it's only working when I press both buttons. Oh, that ain't right. So there's definitely something. I wonder if somebody had this apart and they didn't put it back together right. Something's not put together right here. Yeah, these batteries are getting warm, so there's something wrong in this switch up here. It's not put together right. I'm gonna have to figure out how this is supposed to be put together. Okay, so a little bit of difficulty on this one that was unexpected. So what actually ended up happening was in this controller, and I haven't run across this before, but it's obvious that it could be a potential problem, is down underneath this little, like, I don't know what it's not cardboard, but it's like a fiber board or some kind of thing where the wiring is attached and the little contacts that do all their doing behind these buttons inside here. It had bad continuity. It really needed to be, like, filed down, sanded down, and cleaned. And basically, I think that was probably most of the problem. I mean, those motors do need to be jump started from sitting for a while, but obviously, as you can see, now it works fine. So it was all in the switch here, or 90% of it was in the switch here. But we did oil it up. You see, I used this zoom spout oiler. This is for, I think it's made for, like, air conditioner motors or electric motor bearings, stuff like that. It says on here good for cooler bearings, motors, 101 other uses. I use it for a lot of things. So now what we need to do is we need to fix this bent rod in the back. So I'm going to take this apart and take care of that. And then we're going to take some of this Meguiar's Scratch X and we will polish up this kind of scuffed up looking horse. And then we'll put them all back together and he'll be ready to go. I guess we'll do that. I mean, you don't really need to see me bend a piece of metal and polish some plastic and put it back together, so I'll just do all that and then show you the final result. So before we get to the very last part of the video where I'll show you the Stallion working, I just wanted to show you where I went inside to do the repair on this. Grab a screwdriver here to give you an idea. Down in here, move this wire a little bit. I didn't have to disconnect any wiring to do this, but down in there you can see the two wires go into the back of these two switches. Well, there's a little tab right there, and also you can't really see it, but behind this battery terminal here there's the opposite. So if you just get down in here and very gently, because you can break the plastic, you just kind of get back behind this little thing here and kind of gently kind of work it up. It might be easier to kind of push it in here while you're doing it, or maybe try pushing this part out, basically stretching these two parts out a little bit and then popping this little thing out, and then this part with all the wires will come out and all the parts of the buttons and switches will be in there, and then you can clean it and then just put it back together. Just pull the wire back down through the hole and you're done. This is a spare one. It was just, see, here's the end of the wire. This is so I can fix another horse with this at some point in the future. So here's the finished Stallion. He's all polished up. Is all put back together. I put a incorrect battery cover on the back of the remote control, just so you can get an idea. There are two types of remote controls, as I mentioned earlier, and the backs will fit on both of them, but it'll show all the wiring at the top where the switches are on the one type, which, as far as I've been able to tell, I've only seen them on the Planet of the Apes horse. So it seems like the other ones have the original type with the rocker switch. And here is the final repaired Mego Stallion. You don't like backwards too much, but Pretty cool little toy. This was one of my favorites as a kid. I still have my original. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope it helps you fix your Mego battery-powered horse. See you again soon.